One of the many curiosities about the PlayStation Portal was that it doesn't actually come with Bluetooth, and if you want to have a wireless audio experience, you're going to have to connect to a pair of headphones that support Sony's proprietary protocol Link. The Pulse Explore wireless earbuds are the first product we've seen to take advantage of this new technology. Alongside that, Sony have included some other impressive technology in these earbuds, namely planar magnetic drivers, which you will usually find in much higher end headphones, and Sony claims they'll enable you to make the most of its 3D audio and experience games as the developers intended. If you were to just pick up the Pulse Explore earbuds without knowing all of that though, you could be forgiven for mistaking them for a much less advanced kind of technology. Because in order to keep the price point down, Sony has had to omit a lot of other features that we associate with higher end earbuds. We'll talk through all those little details as we go through the experience in general, but the first thing that really alarmed me was that this Link technology didn't even seem to work straight out of the box. While I was able to get the Explorers connected to my iPhone via Bluetooth, over a day and a half of struggling later, I eventually got my earbuds to connect to the PlayStation Portal. Considering the main reason I bought them in the first place was to have a more comfortable gaming experience on my Portal, which I've been using a lot more regularly than I expected, I was pretty annoyed that it took so long to get them connected. And it's just one example of how this Link technology doesn't quite seem to be as mature as I was hoping it would be. It sounds simple, but even just little touches like the fact you have to have your PlayStation Portal on and connected to your PlayStation 5 before you can actually put in your earbuds and get them to connect. It just means that when I'm playing in bed, I have to make sure the Portal is on mute before I connect to the PlayStation. Then I can put my earphones in and then I can bump up the volume to the desired range, rather than just having them in straight away, booting up the Portal and then being sure that I'm not going to disturb anybody who's sleeping next to me. The PlayStation Portal is also the only device that has a built-in connection to Link, which I think seems like a real missed opportunity considering the PlayStation Slim came out so recently. And if you do want to connect to your PlayStation 5, you'll need to make use of the Link dongle that comes included in your PlayStation Pulse Explore box. It's in the form of a mini thumbstick that you can plug into the USB-A port of your PlayStation 5 or any other computing device you want to use to make the most of the Link protocol. You can connect up to 6 of these with your earbuds if you want to make the most out of that lossless and minimal lag audio. However, cycling through those devices isn't quite as convenient as Sony would have you believe. It took me way too long to realise that the thumbstick itself is an actual button, so you have to press it into the connection and then also click on the headphones themselves in order to actually move through pairings. So you do have to get up off the couch if you want to switch from your PlayStation Portal to the PlayStation 5. And it does seem to have a decent range because on that day where I couldn't connect to the Portal, I was able to go all the way upstairs and continue streaming audio from my PlayStation 5 while playing the actual game on my Portal. However, anytime you have to engage with the buttons on the earbuds themselves, you're reminded of that corner cutting which has produced a product which just doesn't feel as premium as the rest of the PlayStation 5 lineup. I actually don't mind the aesthetic design of the Pulse Explorers, and I'm getting used to the slightly unusual way that they actually go into your ear. But they do feel like they don't have the build quality that I would expect from PlayStation. Whether it's the volume rockers on top or the Link button underneath, they really don't feel very premium to actually handle, and you have to hold them in place while you're pressing them to make sure that the earbuds don't just fall out of your ear. Luckily, you don't have to touch the volume rocker that often because it only influences the volume of any connected Link headset. So any Bluetooth accessories you've got connected to the earbuds, you'll have to actually go onto that device to change the volume. And I think they've put this in place because, to their credit, they've actually made a way of being able to use Bluetooth and Link at the same time. So you can listen to a podcast or take a phone call while you're playing a certain kind of game and listen to both audio sources at the same time. So in that situation, the volume rocker on the earbud is going to influence your PlayStation Portal while you'll have to go onto your phone to, change the volume there. If you're wondering what phone case I've been using with my iPhone 15 Pro, I'd like to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Andar, who sent over their Aspen case for me to try out. It does come in a range of colour options. This particular one is the jet black version. Minimal design of full grain oil wax leather, feels really comfortable and premium in your hand. One of the great things about leather cases is how those little scratches and patinas are going to build up over time and make this feel like a really unique case. And it's also going to protect your iPhone really well too. That soft microfiber inner lining is going to be the perfect little glove for your iPhone. And beyond the Aspen case, Andar make plenty of amazing leather accessories and goods that can be used alongside your technology. So it's really exciting to offer you a 15% discount across the whole site using the code intentional. They have a 90-day return policy, so if you're not sure about the items you receive, you can always send them back. But I'm confident you're going to love anything you pick up from their store, and this is definitely now my daily driver on my iPhone. So thanks again to Andar for sending it over, and now back to the video. In the box you get 4 tip options, and luckily for me, I feel like I do have a size tip that really does fit me very well. Gives me a good seal and gives me good sound quality coming through. But I do know from looking through all the Reddit threads that there are people who've struggled to get a good fit with one of the built-in ear tips and have been looking at third parties to actually get the seal that they've wanted. I do think it's a shame that they've only included 4 different options and that the material they've used feels a little bit cheap and plasticky and definitely picks up quite a bit of earwax. However, I would say that these are a fairly light and comfortable pair of earbuds to wear. If you are wearing them in bed and you want to roll onto your side with your head against the pillow, you're definitely going to be able to do that without them pushing into your ear or creating too much discomfort. One big disappointment is that I can't find a water resistance certification for these earbuds. So if you were thinking about taking them out and about and actually exploring with them, as the name suggests, you might not want to do it in rainy weather. In terms of that kind of portability as well, it's also good to look at the case. And you can see that it is pretty much twice the size of an AirPods case. And it's also a bit of a conspicuous shape, so I don't necessarily think you want this in your pocket all the time, but it's actually not as big as something like the Powerbeats Pro. But okay, I'm willing to put aside some of those build quality issues if the plain on magnetic drivers actually do their job and give me a really premium sound experience when I'm playing my PlayStation. Reviewing audio performance is always going to be really subjective, but at least in theory, those plain non-magnetic drivers are in there to give you a real depth of sound with a lot of detail so that you can hear all the little minutiae of the audio design that have been put into games by sound designers. Playing through a game like God of War Ragnarok, which balances these huge cinematic moments alongside smaller moments of reflection where you really want to hear the subtleties of the environment you're in, and then a lot of dialogue throughout. It really has been an incredibly immersive experience, and I've felt so part of this world that I'm traveling through as Kratos. I've also been playing through Journey, which I constantly return to whenever I need a bit of a mental break, and I'm hearing sounds that I've never heard before just because of how detailed that audio is. Because this is quite a balanced sound profile, it's not going to overemphasize any particular parts of the score. That means if you are used to these big explosions or gunshots in a game like COD, you are not going to feel the same sort of juddering sense of bass that you get from, your soundbar or another kind of headphone. But that's not really what these headphones are intended to produce. They are intended to give you the music, the audio track, as the sound designers really intended, and give you that big, broader spectrum with a lot of detail for people who want to really listen closely and get very sucked into the game they're playing. This sound profile means that it's not going to appeal to everybody in terms of music playback. Whatever kind of music you like listening to, it's a natural tendency to be drawn towards those lower frequencies in a piece of music. And that's why a lot of the really popular headphones out there do really emphasize the bass, but that's not necessarily how the artists always intended that piece of music to be heard. And I find that the Pulse Explorers are much closer to more like reference headphones that I've used when editing videos than they are to something like AirPods or Beats headphones. You'll definitely still get quite a decent bass coming through, but you'll hear it in a different way. Be able to kind of hear the twang or the thud and discern kind of how that instrument was played in a much better way. you'll also get a lot more detail across the spectrum of a track. I've been listening to everything from K-pop to Radiohead, quite a bit of grime, and these are completely different styles of music, but I've been able to appreciate them in a new way by listening to them through these headphones, especially because the vocal tracks will kind of come through in a lot more detail. And that's particularly noticeable if you're listening to something like K-pop, which layers a lot of high-pitched vocals on top of itself. I've been able to hear quite a lot of subtle backing vocals in songs by the likes of New Jeans or Les Seraphim, which I haven't been able to detect before. And in Radiohead, I really get a sense of the kind of trill of some of the guitar moments and the way that the guitars have actually been set up. The funny thing is that this doesn't sound good to everybody. Some people don't really want to sit there and track individual instruments through a song and get interested in the audio that way. I mean, I play guitar, I'm interested in kind of music production, and that interests me. But I can completely see the other side of the spectrum, where if you're just more of like a casual music listener, or you just really like a thumpy bass, you want something to dance to, you want a bit of fun, you want something that's going to energize you, these are not the headphones that are going to do that. This kind of separation, by the way, is really crucial to using your headphones with Bluetooth and Link at the same time, because if someone is coming through on a voice call, then you're going to quite easily be able to isolate their voice even within the mix of the game that you're playing. And I think that's actually really clever in the way it's been implemented. We've covered quite a lot of ground with the Pulse Explorer, and as you can see, it's not really a straightforward proposition. On the one hand, I think these are really impressive earbuds in terms of their audio performance, particularly when you're playing video games. And of course, they are the only wireless option if you want to play your PlayStation Portal with a pair of earbuds. On the other hand, in order to implement this new technology, Sony have made some pretty big trade-offs in terms of build quality. The lack of a dedicated EQ option is really going to limit you if you don't like that sound profile. And ultimately, these are a pretty expensive addition to what is already quite an expensive accessory. If you really want a set of wireless earbuds for your PlayStation Portal, then these are the only option, and I'm not actually disappointed that I picked them up. However, if you're not too fussed about whether you have earbuds or over-the-ear headphones, then it probably would be better off waiting for the headset that's just going to come out next year, because they're going to be £150 or dollars, so slightly cheaper and not quite as big an outlay as these earbuds. If you're planning to get these as a more all-purpose earbuds, something that you primarily use with your PlayStation 5 in the actual living room, and you also want to take these out and about with you, then I don't think they're worth it in that capacity. Basically because there are already lots of headphones that you can connect to your PlayStation 5 itself, and then things like the slightly lacking battery life and complete lack of confidence that you will have in its ability to resist water. And of course, it is a bit of a gamble as to whether you'll actually like the sound profile on these earbuds for music. Watch this video to see why I like the PlayStation Portal so much, and thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in a bit.